There is a study that says you can increase your productivity by 40% if you include AI in your workflow. Now imagine you're sitting in your office trying to write an Excel formula to finish a report. It takes 20 minutes of trial and error to get it right. Now imagine writing the same formula in just a few seconds with ChatGPT and finishing your report instantly. And that's not all. You can also write VBA codes, automate repetitive tasks, and save hours of manual work every single day. But there is a catch. You need to know the right way of using ChatGPT with Excel. And that is the reason I have built this course for you. And I'm going to take you through some basics first, and then we're going to learn how to write formulas, transforming our data, and then writing codes and analyzing our data. And in the end, we're going to add an AI function in our Excel. I also have one ebook for you that can help you to write prompts for Excel in ChatGPT quickly. So if you're really serious about increasing your productivity and saving your time, let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to this ultimate course on using ChatGPT with Excel to 10x your Excel skills. My name is Puneet and I've been using Excel for last 15 years and I'm also an Microsoft MVP. And before we start this course, make sure to download all the sample files, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and make sure to go to comment section if you want to ask anything. As I said, there is a right way to use ChatGPT and there is not so right way to use it. And that's the reason we need to get into some basics first. And in this part, we are going to get into the most important point of using any AI tool. And that is writing a prompt. So let's have a look. Now let's understand a simple framework to write prompts in ChatGPT for all the Excel requirements. Now what happens is when we write a message to a friend for a help, we don't follow any kind of rule or framework, but when we're writing prompts in ChatGPT, it's always better to follow a kind of framework to get better response and save time even getting the response back from the ChatGPT. Now the first point is to be specific. So let's say instead of saying, how do I use VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, I can say, how do I use VLOOKUP to find a product price based on product ID in a different sheet? So here, I'm not asking about a particular formula. I'm explaining the entire requirement that I have. So I'm very, very specific about what I want here from ChatGPT. So it gives ChatGPT more clarity that what I want. And in return, it's easy to get a formula for this. Even ChatGPT may give you different variations of the formula to use in your data. Now, the next thing is to provide context. So let's say if I want to achieve something, let's say I want to have a formula that can give me a particular result. Instead of asking for that formula straight away in one line, I can provide more context. Let's say I have a list of sales figure by region and I want to calculate the total for the East region. So in this case, I'm not saying I want a formula to get sum based on a condition. I'm providing the context that what kind of data I have and what kind of result I want in return. So always provide more context. And after that is to break down your requirements. So let's say if I want to write a VBA code and I want to filter my data and then I want to copy that data and then insert a new workbook, paste that data in that workbook, and then I want to save that workbook. So now to mention that in one go, I can write that prompt in steps and then send it to ChatGPT to give me a VBA code for that. So always try to break down if you have a long kind of requirement. Let's say you want to write a VBA code or kind of formula you want. So always make sure to break down your prompt. The next thing is to ask for examples. So sometimes I'm just asking for a formula from ChatGPT, but along with that, I can also say, hey, can you show me an example of nested if formula? So this is the formula that I want to write. But what I'm saying here, can you show me an example of nested if formula that grades students based on their scores? So this is kind of example that I'm asking from ChatGPT. So it will not only give me the formula, but it will also explain me how this formula works in this particular situation. Now, the last thing is to explain the desired outcome as well. So it's not about asking for a formula or a VBA code, but also the result that you want in return from that formula or the VBA code. So let's say if I say I want to automate sorting my sales data by region every time new data is added and I want VBA code for this. So here I'm asking about sorting my data whenever I'm adding new data and I want a VBA code for this. So that's the desired outcome that I want from the response. So make sure to add this framework in your practice while writing prompts to ChatGPT. And you can download this small framework from the link in the description. All right, so now I'm on the homepage of ChatGPT. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a free account and show you how you can sign up for yourself as well. Now, the point is, even if you don't log in into ChatGPT or create a free account, you can use ChatGPT. You will get the answer, but it will not save that chat for later use. So it's always better to have a free account, even if you don't want to go into the paid account. Just create a free account and start using ChatGPT. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on create free account. And now I'm going to go with my Gmail because I have a Gmail account that I want to use to sign up to the ChatGPT. So right now I'm into my logged in ChatGPT account, and whenever you use ChatGPT by logging into your account, you get access to all the previous chats. So let me show you a simple example. All right, so now you can see as soon as you get a response from ChatGPT, you get that chat here on the left side of the window. So you can access this chat whenever you want in future. Now in the coming videos, we will not only learn how to use ChatGPT, but we will also learn how to use all the settings and customizations that we have in ChatGPT to use. And in the next video, I'm going to show you what is the difference between having a free account and having a paid account. So there are few limitations with the free account, and there are few extra options that you get when you move to a paid ChatGPT account. Formulas are the core of any reporting. And if you can generate or write formulas quickly, you can save a lot of time. And this is one thing that I have realized while using ChatGPT and other AI tools. When you write or generate formulas with AI, you not only generate them, you also learn those formulas. So it's a win-win situation. So let's start writing formulas using ChatGPT. All right, so here I have few values in the range A1 to A10. And out of these values, I want to count the cells where I have text value. So for this, again, I'm going to use ChatGPT to write a formula. And I will add a prompt that I already written. And this prompt says, I have data in the range A1 to A10. Please share a formula that can count the number of cells with text values. And now let's see the response we get from ChatGPT. Okay, so the formula we have got now is by using COUNTIF. Now, as you can see, it also explains you what the formula is all about and how this formula actually works. So it says this formula works by counting all the cells in the range A1 that contain any text, where an asterisk. So asterisk is basically a wildcard character, and you can use asterisk for any kind of text. Now let me copy this formula and let me go back to my workbook and see if this formula works or not. So we have 7 in the result. That means there are 7 cells with text, and that's correct. Now in the second example, I have 2 dates. The one is starting date and one is the ending date. And now I want to count total number of complete weeks between these 2 dates. So for this, I'm going to go to my ChatGPT window and I'm going to add my prompt here. And this prompt says, I have 2 dates in cell A1 and A2. Now I want to calculate the total number of complete weeks between these 2 dates. Now let me hit enter and see the response we get from ChatGPT. All right, so the formula is quite simple. It's not that complex. Let me explain this formula. Let me read the explanation that we have got from ChatGPT. So it says this formula works by first finding the absolute difference between these 2 dates and then dividing that difference by 7 to convert the days into weeks. Yes, that's correct. Finally, the int function is used to round down the nearest whole number, giving you the total number of complete weeks between 2 dates. All right, let me copy this formula and let me go back to my worksheet. Let's enter this formula here. Oops, so my date was in the wrong cell, and let me copy the formula again. And here I have the formula, and let me hit enter to get the result. Oops, I need to convert it into numbers. All right, so there are 24 weeks, complete weeks between 2nd March 2024 and 22 August 2024. Now in the third example, I have a single date in the cell A1 and I want to get the date of the previous Sunday. So I want to get date of the previous Sunday from this date. So again, I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to add my prompt. And this prompt says I have a date in the cell A1 and now I want to get a formula to know the date of the previous Sunday. So here we have our formula and we have explanation with the formula as well. So this explanation says this formula works by using weekday function, which returns a number representing the day of the week for the date in the cell A1. Okay. The option 2 in the weekday sets Monday at the starting of the week. By subtracting the week number from the date, it returns the date of previous Sunday. Okay, that makes sense. And let me copy the formula and go back to my worksheet. Here we have our formula and here we have the date. Let me convert it into a date with day name. So let's see this date is Sunday or not. So this is the date of previous Sunday from 22nd August. All right, so here I have few values in the range A1 to A10, and now I want to sum values where a value is above 15,000 or equals to 15,000. And here I know that there is a specific function for this and I can write a formula with this function. But if you are someone who doesn't want to get into this, you just need a formula that can, do the work for you. You can use ChatGPT and save your time. And now I'm going to go to my ChatGPT and here I'm going to add my prompt to get the formula. And here's my prompt. Now in this prompt says I have numbers in the cell A1 to A10 and I want a formula that can sum values above or equal to 15,000. And let me hit enter. And here we have our formula with the function sum if. Let me copy this formula and go back to my worksheet and here I'm going to paste this formula. So the answer is 69389. Let me verify it for you. We have this value, this, and this. So total we have 5 values which are, all right, so no, we have this value, this, this. So we have total 4 values basically which are above or equals to 15,000 and the sum is 69389. All right, so here I have names and scores in column A and B. And now I want to write a if formula that can give me grade based on the score. So I'm going to go to my ChatGPT and I'm going to add a prompt that I already have written. And this prompt says I have scores in the column B and now I want to write a nested if function to get grades for the scores like 0 to 20 E, 21 to 40 B, 41 to 60 C, 61 to 80 B, and 81 to 100 A. And I'm going to hit enter. And here I have my ready to use nested if function. Nested if basically when you have one if function within the another if function. So I have this and then this, and this. And now I'm going to copy this formula from here and go to my worksheet. And here in the cell C2, I'm going to add this formula and hit enter. And now let's drag this formula down, and here I have my result based on the score that I have in the column B. So this formula is pretty simple if you try to understand it. So first, it checks if a score is below 20 or equals to 20, gives E. If the score is below 40 or equals to 40, then D. And if the score is below 60 or 60, then C. And if below 80 or equals to 80, then B. Otherwise, if none of these conditions are met, then A. So it creates this small slab 0 to 20, 21 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 80, and then A for other numbers, which are 81 to 100. Now here I have the same data, but I also have previous score along with the current score. Now here I want to write the same nested if formula, but I want that formula to consider the previous score as well. So if the previous score is high than the current score, it should add a negative sign with the current score. That means the score from previous score is declined. And if the score is increased from the previous score, it should add a positive sign with that. So if someone is scoring A, but its score from previous to current has increased, so it should add a plus sign along with the grade. So for this, I already have written a prompt here, and I'm gonna add it to my chat. And here it says, now please tweak the above. So now I'm gonna hit enter to see what I'm gonna get in response from ChatGPT. So here we have our formula along with all the explanation. And now I'm gonna copy this formula from here and go to my workbook, and let me hit enter. So here I have grades, and I also have the positive and negative sign along with the grades. Now I have got the formula that gives me grades and also plus and minus signs based on the previous score. But now in this formula, there is one basic problem that I need to correct. Now this problem is, if you look at the James and Isabella, the current score and the previous score is same, but the sign I have got with the grade is minus. So this is something I don't want. I want to have a positive sign if the current score is equal to this previous score. So now I'm going to copy this formula from here, and I am going to go back to my ChatGPT, and here I'm going to paste this formula and write a prompt to ask ChatGPT to correct this formula with the correction that I want. But before that, let me tell you something. So there was an update in ChatGPT with a new model. So when I was recording the previous part, as I said, I had GPT 4.0, but now I also have a new model that is GPT 4.0 with Canvas, which helps you, to write codes and do all sort of writings with a better speed and accuracy. So this is one of the perks of using the paid subscription of ChatGPT. Now moving back to my formula, I'm going to write a prompt here. And here I have got my new formula. Let me copy it and go back to my workbook. And let me replace this formula. And let's see if this works. All right, so it's working the way I want. So this is an example that sometimes you need to go back to ChatGPT and improve your formula. Now in the next video, we're going to see how we can actually improve formulas or ask ChatGPT to suggest better formulas for the existing formulas we have. So instead of using nested if, we're going to use a different formula that we're going to get as suggestion from ChatGPT. All right, so this is the formula that we have got from ChatGPT in the last video. So this is a nested if formula. But now in this video, I'm going to show you how you can ask ChatGPT to suggest you a better formula by specifying the formula that you already have. So for this, I already written a prompt, and now I'm going to go to my ChatGPT window and I'm going to paste my prompt here. this prompt says that, hey, I have a grading system that converts scores to grades based on the specific ranges. And I'm currently using a nested if formula for this. And this is a formula. Can you help me with a better formula that uses a helper table? Now, the moment I hit enter, it gives me a detailed reply using the VLOOKUP function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this table from here. That is the first step, it says. And then I'm going to go to my worksheet. And now I'm going to copy this formula from here, or I'm just going to click on the copy code. And I need to adjust the range from here. And now I'm going to hit enter to get the result. And as you can see, we have got the same grades that we have got from using nested if formula. So this is how you can ask ChatGPT to suggest you a better formula by sharing your prompt and the existing formula that you have. Now, apart from using VLOOKUP, you can also ask ChatGPT again to suggest you more formulas. So let me just add a little bit of my prompt here. Now here you can see we have got a reply from ChatGPT, and in this reply we have 3 formulas, but one of these formulas is basically the exact nested if function. But this nested if function is not by using the if function, but the ifs function, which is a new function that we have in Excel 365. Now you can see we have 3 formulas. One is by using choose and match, and then one is using lookup with an array, and then again using the ifs function. So this is how you can actually increase your clarity on formulas. Sometimes you just know there's one formula that you can use, but when you ask ChatGPT, hey, I just want a better formula, or I just want a alternative formula for the existing formula that I have. So it will suggest you few more things, and you can choose with which formula you want to use. And you can also ask ChatGPT, hey, look, tell me which formula is best for this scenario, so that you will always use a better formula. It will not slow down your workbook, or it will not slow down your calculation. So in my case, the VLOOKUP is the best formula that I can use, or that I want to use. So that is why I'm going with VLOOKUP. But you can always have, more than one suggestion from ChatGPT for your formula. And this is the second formula that we have got in the last video from ChatGPT. And this formula not only gives you grades based on the current score, but it also consider the previous score and add a sign of plus and minus with the grade. So if the previous score is less than the current score, it will give you a plus sign. And if the previous score is more than the current score, that means it will give a minus sign with the grade. Now, and here I also want to have a better formula for this. I don't want to use the if statement, if nested if statement. And again, I'm going to go to my ChatGPT. And again, I'm going to go to my ChatGPT. And to get this formula, I'm going to go to ChatGPT and add my prompt there. And I have already written this prompt. So this prompt says, hey, I have a list of scores and names in 2 columns, and I'm using the formula below to get the grades based on the scores. So this is the formula. Is there a way to create a more efficient, easily manageable formula with the helper table and VLOOKUP for assigning grades based on the score? So again, I have got the reply from ChatGPT. And here, first of all, I have this table that I need to use as a helper table. And then I have the formula that, use VLOOKUP and also include a if statement. Now here, I can use this function, and this function is basically quite easily manageable. The reason is, if I want to change anything in the range of grades, I just need to change it in the table. So let me copy this table from here first, and let me go to my worksheet. And now let me copy the formula from here. and paste it here. And I need to change the table reference, and let's drag this formula down. So we have same result. The only difference is that the minus and plus sign is after the grade, which we have got before the grade in the nested if formula. So I'm going to go back to ChatGPT and make this correction. And here we have the formula. I'm going to copy it, go back to my workbook, paste it here, change the reference of the table, hit enter, and here we have all the results with grade and plus and minus sign. So this is how you can improve your formula. You can improve your formula just by asking ChatGPT, hey, I have this formula already and I want to use a better formula, or I have a suggestion that I want to use in my formula. Let's say if my preference is to use VLOOKUP, so I can ask that I want to use VLOOKUP and share an example with the sample data, or share steps to use the formula. So you might remember that in the very beginning of this course, we have learned that whenever you writing a prompt to ChatGPT, always have a clear desired outcome. So in this case, when I mentioned that I want to use VLOOKUP, that means I'm telling ChatGPT, hey, I want a formula by using the VLOOKUP function. So I'm going to start off with this table that I have in my worksheet. And in this table, I have salesperson's name, sales target, and sales achievement. Now I want to write a formula that can give me a status of achieved or not achieved based on if a person achieved their target or not. So I want to write a formula for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this table from here, and I'm going to go back to my chat GPT, and now I'm going to paste this table as an image instead of data. So either way, you can just paste it and then delete the data, and after that I'm going to write my prompt. This prompt just ask for a formula to get the status based on target and achievements. So let's see what we're going to get from chat GPT back in response. So this is, I was expecting to get a if based formula. Now let me go back to my table and let me paste this formula here and see the result. Yes, so the formula works pretty much fine, and this is what I was looking for. Now let's move to our next table. Here in this table, I have customer's name, loan amount, interest rate, and number of years. Now what I want to know the monthly payment that one person, each customer basically needs to pay for the number of years that we have here. So again, I'm going to copy this from here. I'm going to go back to my chat GPT. I'm going to paste it as an image. And here I'm going to just add my prompt here. So this prompt basically asks for, hey, I have a table with loan amount, interest rate, and number of years. Now I want an Excel formula to calculate the monthly payment of the loan amount. And here we're going to get our formula from ChatGPT. Now the response that I have got is based on the PMT function in Excel. So PMT functions basically calculates the payment for a loan based on constant payments and constant rate of interest. And now I'm just gonna copy this formula from here and go back to my table, and I'm gonna straight paste it into the cell. And here I have the monthly payment of the loan that one person needs to pay every month. And in this example, I have few values in the column A, but these values are pretty much mixed of numbers and text and symbols. Now what I want here, I want to extract only numbers. And for this, I'm going to get a formula from ChatGPT. And again, instead of using the data itself, I'm going to use an image, and Let me go back to ChatGPT and I'm going to add a new chat box here. And here I'm going to write my prompt. So here's the response that I got from ChatGPT, and I'm going to go back to my workbook, enter the formula, and the reference in the formula is not correct. Basically, I need to change it to A1. So let me drag the formula and see. All right. So I have got all the numbers from the values. Now here's this one thing that you need to understand. This formula is using text join function, which might not be available in all the Excel versions. You might not be using the Excel 365. So for this, I am going to ask ChatGPT to share something else, a different formula. All right, let me see if we can use it. Again, I need to change the preference here. All right. Yes, formula is working pretty much fine. And the idea here is pretty simple, that if you don't have data itself, you can also get formula from ChatGPT using the image of the data. So here I have this data where I have sales target and sales achievement, and I'm trying to write a formula based on it to know which salesperson achieved the target or which did not. And when I hit enter to apply this formula, it shows me an error that there is something wrong with this formula that I'm trying to insert. So to understand this error, so instead of troubleshooting myself, I'm gonna go to my chat GPT and I'm gonna add this formula, and let's see what we're gonna get from chat GPT in response. So basically the problem with this formula is that instead of having double quotation marks, we have a quote single quote twice. And that is why this formula was not working when I was trying to enter it into the cell. So now I'm gonna try to insert this formula, and yes, it's working. So it was just a small mistake, small typing mistake that I made, but sometimes it happens that you are not able to find that sort of mistake which is there, but you cannot identify it just by seeing it in your Excel worksheet. So in that case, ChatGPT is quite helpful to identify that problem quickly. And here I'm just trying to calculate average for these numbers, but I have a not available error here in the cell A3, and that is why I'm getting the same error in the result. Now I want to debug this formula. I want to change this formula, and now I'm gonna add this data to ChatGPT as an image to get a corrected formula. All right, so here we have the formula, the correct formula, that is average if. And now I'm gonna enter this formula here and see if I get average of all the numbers in return. All right, so that's the correct way of calculating average when you have error. And here in this example, I'm trying to extract only text from the cell A1, but the problem is what I'm getting in the result is the exact same value, the value with numbers and text both. So again, I'm gonna take the help of ChatGPT and to correct my formula that I'm using. So I'll go to ChatGPT, and here I have the prompt that I have already written. So this prompt basically says, hey, I have this formula that I'm using to extract text from the cell A1, but somehow this is only returning the same value in the result. And I want you to suggest me a correct formula. So let me hit enter to see if I'm going to get a new formula for this. Sometimes when you're using ChatGPT, it will ask you to give a feedback by providing you two different responses to your question. So in that case, you need to, accept one response. So I'm going to go with the second one. And here I have this formula that is pretty long. And now I'm going to go back to my workbook And let's see if this formula is working. All right, so we have got our result, which is only text values from the the original value that we have in the cell A1. So that is how you can use ChatGPT to change, improve, or debug your formulas. You would agree with me on this that nothing wastes more time than dirty data. As a data analyst or anyone who use Excel for reporting, you can save a lot of time with ChatGPT to transform and clean your data. So let's have a look. So here I have a PDF file that I want to convert into an Excel file or into a CSV file. And for this, I'm gonna again use ChatGPT. So first of all, I'm gonna go to my ChatGPT window. And here I have a small icon that allows me to attach a file. I'm gonna click on it, load from my computer. You can also use Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive, but I'm gonna go with my computer. And here I'm gonna select the file that I want to upload. And now I am going to write a prompt a few seconds or maybe 1 minute to convert this file. And here we have our PDF file that is now converted into a Excel workbook. Let me download it and see how it looks. All right, that's pretty much near to perfect. The only thing that we don't have is the data or the value formatting of currency. So basically, ChatGPT doesn't know that we can use formatting in Excel. So that is why the formatting is not there, but that's fine. Now you know that ChatGPT can read your PDF files and convert them into Excel or CSV or any other format. You can also use ChatGPT to get a short or quick analysis from your PDF files. Let's say if I attach this file again, and instead of converting it into a Excel file, so again, it will take a few seconds or maybe 1 minute to analyze the file and then reply back with a new Excel file. All right, so we have got our summary Excel workbook, and let me download and open it. All right, so that looks nice. So the point is you can use ChatGPT to convert your PDF files into Excel so that you can use those files further, or you can also ask ChatGPT to give you a quick or short analysis or short summary of that PDF file. Next videos, we're gonna use ChatGPT to clean and extract data from Excel files, where instead of using formulas and all sort of things, we'll use ChatGPT straight away to give us clean data. So here I have a workbook, and in this workbook, in each worksheet, I have a single entry. So this entry is basically your entry of invoice. And now what I want here, I want to combine all of these entries into one single worksheet and having a single row of headings here. So for this, again, I'm going to use ChatGPT. And here, because I'm sharing this workbook with ChatGPT, I need to write a descriptive but explanatory prompt so that ChatGPT can understand that what I actually want. So for this, again, I'm going to close this workbook, and then I'm going to open my ChatGPT. So first of all, I'm going to attach the file. And now I'm going to write a prompt to ChatGPT to just check this workbook if ChatGPT can read data from all the worksheets. All right, so we have got a reply from ChatGPT that says the workbook contains 100 sheets, each named sequentially from sheet 1 to sheet 100. I can read the header row 1 and the entry row 2 from each sheet if you would like. How would you like to proceed? Would you like to see the data from specific sheet or extract all of it? All right. Now let me write my second prompt where I just want ChatGPT to combine this data into a single worksheet. All right. So we have got link to download the file, and let me download the file and see what we have got in the file. Oh, so data is not there. So it happens sometime when prompting ChatGPT and it gives you a wrong result. In that case, you need to reprompt, need to reshare what you actually want. So we have got another link for the workbook. Let's see if we got the right workbook this time. All right. So here we have our data with all the invoice numbers, dates, customer name, amount, and status. And that is what we have in all the worksheets in the original workbook. So this is how you can take help of ChatGPT to combine data from multiple worksheets into a single worksheet. So here I have a bunch of PDF files, and each of these files is basically a invoice. And in this invoice, I have a few set of data, that is client name, address, phone number, invoice number, date, and all the details of the products. And now I want to combine data from all these files into one single Excel workbook. So for this, I'm going to go to my ChatGPT. And first of all, I'm going to ask ChatGPT that, hey, I have a few PDF files that have, set of data, which are invoices basically, and I want to combine data from these files. Can you do this for me? So ChatGPT says, please upload the PDF files and I can help you extract data and combine them into a single workbook. That's fine. So I'm going to click on my attached file icon. I'm going to go to my computer and select all the files that I have. And now I'm going to upload all of them. Now, along with these files, I'm going to write a few instructions, simple instructions that I want ChatGPT to consider while combining data. Now, I'm going to hit enter to send my prompt to the ChatGPT, and let's see what we will get in the response. It takes a few seconds sometime, or maybe 1 minute. All right, so we have got our Excel workbook with all the data. And let me download it and see what we have got inside. So the data is pretty neat. We have all the entries. We have one entry for each of the product. And that's how I asked ChatGPT to combine the data, which is pretty neat. So the point is, if you want to combine data from PDFs or any kind of file or even Excel files, which we will see in the next video, you need to have a clear prompt. You need to give clear instructions, because sometimes as AI is still in the learning mode, so it needs to understand that how you want ChatGPT or any other AI tool to respond to you, or how to execute the task that you want. Right. So here I have a small set of data around some employees in the company. And in this data, I have a few problems that I want to solve. So this data is basically not clean, and I want to clean this data. So if you can see in the names column, I have some before spaces and after spaces and some spaces between the first and the last name. And I want to correct, these names. And in the department, we have few, characters with the name of the department that I want to remove. And in the higher date, the date is there, but the problem is this date is not basically a date as per Excel's valid date format. So you can see here this is a text and I have name of the day as well, and I want to remove these names. And in the salary, again, we have some problems. We have dollar sign and a comma in between the numbers. And in the phone number column, the format is not consistent. Somewhere we have brackets and somewhere we have the dots. And I want to actually clean this data entirely. Now, when I go to ChatGPT, as I mentioned earlier, you have two different models that you can use. So when you select 4O, you get the ability to upload a file or attach a file with your prompt. But when you use 4O mini, you don't have that ability to attach or upload the file. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the 4O mini and I'm going to copy this data from here and I'm going to paste it here. So instead of attaching a file, I'm going to enter data directly into the chat box. And here, now I'm going to write my prompt. So my prompt is ready and I tried to share almost all the things that I want ChatGPT to correct in this data. So let me hit enter and see what we get in the result. And you will see we have got data which is pretty much cleaned, but we don't have a space between first name and last name. So might be my what I have just shared with ChatGPT is not correct in sense of spaces. So I said remove spaces from the names. All right, so let me copy this. As I said, we are using 4O mini. So when you use 4O mini, you don't have the ability to download data as a CSV or Excel file. So that's one limitation of using 4O mini, but that's not a problem here. I'm gonna just copy this data and then I'm gonna go to my workbook and I'm gonna paste this data here. And let me see if data is correct. Okay, and voice names are fine. Dates are also fine. So let me convert it to an actual date format. Let's see if dates are fine. Perfect. All right. So we have salary and we have format, currency format already applied. And the phone numbers are also fine. So this is a simple example that you can actually clean data with ChatGPT. But you need to understand one thing. If you have a large data which is with like thousands of rows, in that case, I would suggest it's better to have a paid plan so that you can use ChatGPT 4o, GPT-4o, and able to attach a file. And when you do that, ChatGPT might take a few minutes to respond because the response actually depends on the length or the size of the data. But it's a great thing that you can, if you want to quickly clean the data, you have ChatGPT for that. Even if you have, data with 100 or 200 rows, you can simply paste that data into the chat and ask ChatGPT to clean that data. The only thing that you need to take care is to be more descriptive and clear on what you actually want ChatGPT to do. So you can see here, like when I prompted first, so my prompt doesn't have the clarity that how many spaces or what kind of spaces I want to remove. So it removed that middle space also. So in that case, you need to tweak your prompt so that you can get the actual result that you want. All right, so here I have a data in my workbook, which is quarter-wise, city-wise data. And for each city, I have two columns. One is urban, one is rural. Now, my point here is to convert this data from this tabular form into more column-based, where I'll have a column for city and then further urban and rural. So, because I cannot use this data in any analysis or any report if I want to build, a pivot or anything. So for this, first of all, I'm gonna copy this data and then I'm gonna go to my ChatGPT. And first of all, again, I'm gonna enter a prompt, asking ChatGPT, hey, can you reshape this data for me? Sometimes when you copy data from Excel and try to paste it into ChatGPT, it also pastes it as an image. So you can just remove it and let me enter the data. Oh, it looks nice. Even though I have not made any prompt into the ChatGPT, it has changed it for me. That's pretty amazing. No, this is quick and fast. Oh, all right. Can you please, can you please share a downloaded file for this? All right, so we have got our file. Let me download it and let me open it here. All right, it's perfect. Okay, so here we have one problem with this data, and that is we have the dollar sign, the currency sign within the value, which is something I do not want. So I'm going to close this workbook and I'm going to go back to the chat GPT and say, hey, please share the file. And let me download it again. All right, so that's pretty nice. The data is clean, amounts are fine. I have all the entries. That's perfect. All right, so here I have a different kind of data here where I have responses from a survey. But the problem with this data is in the first column, you can see we do have names, but the structure of the responses is different in each of the entries. So the same thing is with the age, and in the fourth column, we do have genders, but I just want it as a male and female. And in the fourth column where we have score, I just want it as a number. So, and again, I'm going to use ChatGPT to clean this data or actually reshape this data. So first of all, I'm going to copy this, go to ChatGPT, and here I'm going to paste it. And now I'm going to add a prompt. And now in this prompt, I have explained it in detail that what I want ChatGPT to do with each of the columns. So it says, hey, I have a data here and I want you to clean and reshape it for me. In the first column, I have names, but as a sentence, and I want you to extract name only, and then extract age from the second column, gender from third column, and in the score from the fourth column. So let me change it and score number from the fourth column, and make sure to use heading of the column as per the data we have in it. And now let's hit enter and see what we are going to get. back in the response. All right, so I have got a response from ChatGPT, and let me show you the data that we have got in the response. The data looks pretty much clean and reshaped. We have names, we have age, gender, and score. And that's the way I wanted data. So let me download it as an Excel file and let me see if there is anything I need to do. I need to make a change or something. Not really, I guess. Everything looks fine and clean. So this is another way that you can deal with data reshaping using ChatGPT. This section is one of my favorite sections in this course. We're gonna write codes using ChatGPT and we're gonna automate to insert a pivot table and also a custom function in Excel. So let's start. All right, so here I'm into my ChatGPT app, and here I need a code to add 10 new worksheets in my workbook in a single go. So for this, I'm gonna write the prompt, and now I'm gonna hit enter to get the reply from ChatGPT. Sometimes it takes a few seconds to reply or complete the reply depending on the speed of your internet, but that's okay. And now here I have a code, very simple code that says loop basically. But if you don't know how VBA works, it's still okay because you can use this code and get your things done. So now I'm gonna copy this code, and mind you, if you see below the code, it also gives me the instructions to add this code to my workbook. So it says you can open the VB editor, go to module and copy and paste the code there, and then use F5 to run the code. Now I'm gonna go back to my Excel workbook, and here I'm gonna go to Developer tab, Visual Basic Editor, or I can also use the keyboard shortcut key Alt plus F11. But I'm going to click on the Visual Basic here. And now as ChatGPT instructed me, I'm going to go to Insert and then Module. And now I'm going to paste the code I just got from ChatGPT. And now I'm going to close this window, Visual Basic Editor. And I'm going to go to Macros. And here I have my code that I have just added to my Visual Basic Editor. And I'm going to run this code to see if this code actually works or not. All right, so now we have 10 new worksheets in the workbook. So you can say we already had the sheet 1, but now the total number of sheets that we have in our workbook is 11. That means 10 new worksheets. So this was a quite easy way to get a VBA code from ChatGPT, even if you don't know how to use VBA, how to write VBA codes. But now let's move to a little complex. Let's say if I want to add 10 new worksheets, but I want to have specific names for those sheets. So here I have these 10 names and I want to add 10 new worksheets in my workbook, and I want to rename them using these 10 names, and I want to write a VBA code for this, and I want to use ChatGPT for this. So here I am into my ChatGPT app, and here I'm going to write a prompt again. All right, so here I have the code, and again I'm going to copy this code and go back to my Excel workbook, and I'm going to go to Visual Basic Editor. And here I'm going to replace this code with the code that I have now. So either you can run this code within the Visual Basic Editor, or you can just close it, go to the macros and run this code from here. The moment I click on run, boom, I have 10 new worksheets, and name of these worksheets is according to the list of names that I have here in my workbook in the sheet 1. So this is how you can initiate a prompt in ChatGPT to get a VBA code the way you want. So the best part is, if you think that code is not running or the code is not performing the way you want, you can go back to ChatGPT and ask it the problem that you're facing, and it will rectify that code for you. We'll understand this in coming videos. And as of now, I want you to open the ChatGPT and try to generate a few codes for you so that you can automate your normal simple tasks in everyday work. So here in my workbook, I have few values in the column A, and I want to get numbers from here, and I want to get a sum of those numbers. So I want to write a custom function. I want to write a code for the custom function that can extract numbers from each cell and then get a sum of those numbers. So let me go back to my chat GPT and let me write a prompt here. Now, as you can see, we have got the code here. So let me copy it and go back to my workbook. And again, I'm going to open the Visual Basic Editor. I'm going to paste this code here and close the Visual Basic Editor. Now, as this code is for a custom function, and let me open the Visual Basic Editor again to show you that instead of having sub here, I have the keyword function. That means this is a custom function, not a sub procedure. So for this, to use this code, I actually need to insert this function. So when I come back to my worksheet and enter this sum, I got the name of the function that I have just created with a VBA code. And now I just need to select the range where I have, values with numbers. And I'm going to close this function and hit enter. And let me see what we get in the result. So it returns 1514. So basically it's 1 and then 56 and then 78 and then 90. So when I calculate the sum of these numbers is actually equals to what we have got in the result. So basically this function can take numbers from each of the cells of the range and then return a sum of those numbers in the cell. All right, so now I'm gonna get a VBA code from ChatGPT to create a pivot table. Now in my workbook, I have data with dates, categories, sales, and region. And now I want to create a pivot table with the VBA code, and I'm gonna get that VBA code from ChatGPT. So let me go back to the ChatGPT window. And here I need to write a prompt to define the data I have and the kind of pivot table that I require from the VBA code. Now in this prompt, I'm asking for a VBA code for the pivot table, and I also have defined the columns, the name of the columns that I have in the data, and then I have specified the name of the worksheet where I have the data and the range of the data. And in the end, I asked about the kind of the pivot table that I want. I want to get pivot table based on categories and sales. And now I'm going to hit enter to see what ChatGPT is going to respond. All right, here we have the code. And along with that, I also have the explanation from ChatGPT that how this code actually works. But now I'm just going to copy this code, going back to my workbook, going to developer tab, open the Visual Basic Editor, insert a new module, and paste this code. And now let me close the Visual Basic Editor, and then from macros, I'm gonna run this macro to create the pivot table. And let's see. All right, so we have pivot table based on categories, that is A, B, C, and D. And we have quantity of sales in the value column. So this is a very simple kind of pivot table that we have, but the code that we have got from ChatGPT is working absolutely fine. Now let's say if I want to create one more pivot table and I want to get a code from ChatGPT, I just need to write a new prompt. But this time I'm not gonna specify everything. I'm just going to ask for a pivot table, a different type of pivot table, by specifying the way I want to create the pivot table, like what I want in the columns and what I want in the values. And again, we have the code and the explanation of the code. And I'm going to copy this code from here, going back to my Visual Basic editor. So instead of just deleting this previous code, I'm just going to paste the new code below it. And now I'm going to close the Visual Basic editor and go to my data worksheet, open the macros and run the code. And here I have a new pivot table based on regions and sales. Now let's think about a different way of creating pivot table. Let's say if I want to create a pivot table based on a dynamic data. So I want that code to create a pivot table based on the data I have, but I don't want to define the range because might be in future I'm gonna add more data. So I'm gonna back to my ChatGPT and I'm gonna ask now I'm gonna go back to my workbook. Again, open the Visual Basic editor. I'm gonna change the code from here, add a new code, close the Visual Basic editor. And now I'm gonna open the macros and run the code. Okay, so we got a new pivot table based on categories and sales. But let's say if I add one more entry, let's say, let me add 20,000 so that we can see the change. Let me delete this and I would go to macros again and run the code again. So you can see here the new entry, the new line of data that I have added in the data is there in the category A. So when I try to double click on it and it will open the source data. And here we have that entry that I have added at the bottom of the source data. So here I have a code from my own blog. So whenever you copy a VBA code from anywhere from the internet, you can take that code and put that code into the ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT that how this code actually works. So let's say if I paste this code here and then below I write a prompt. So ChatGPT gives me a detailed step-by-step explanation of this code. So I can use this explanation to understand that how this code works and what are the changes that I can do in this code to make it useful for myself. And in the same way, if I want to add comments to this code so that I can change it in near future, or anyone else who's using this code can change code according to their need, I can also do that. And for this, I'm gonna write a new prompt here. And here I have code with all the comments added by ChatGPT. It makes this code a little lengthy, but it gives you more clarity. So whenever you use this code or anyone else use this code, they will have the clarity that how this code actually works step by step, line by line. So I'm going to copy this code and come back to my worksheet. We'll go to Visual Basic Editor, insert a new module, and paste this code here. So now for each line of code, I have a comment that explains that how this line works. What is the purpose of this line? All right, so let me show you an example here. I have this code in my Visual Basic Editor, and when I run this code, it deletes all the rows where I have the value hello in the column A. So let me show you by running this code. So as you can see, all the rows are just deleted, but here there is one flaw in this code, and let me show you that flaw also. Now you can see I have these values hello in a sequence. I have values in two cells in a sequence. Now when I run this code again, it will not be able to delete all the rows with the hello. Now to solve this problem, I'm gonna improve this code using ChatGPT. So I'm gonna copy this code from here and I'm gonna go to my ChatGPT, and here I already have my prompt and I'm gonna paste the code. Now this prompt says this code deletes rows where I have the value hello in column A, but this code has a problem. When I have value hello in consecutive cells, it only delete one row out of two. And now let me hit enter to see what I'm gonna get from ChatGPT in correction of this code. All right, so now I have got a new code from ChatGPT, and let me copy it from here, and I'm gonna go to my Visual Basic Editor again, and I'm gonna paste the new code. All right, and let me test this code once again, and now let me run the code. So yes, it's working. So this is the simple way of correcting your code. Now the idea here is just, whenever you have a code that doesn't work the way you want, you can just copy that code and write a prompt to ChatGPT and let ChatGPT to correct and improve that code. And here's one more improvement that I want to make in this code, and that's if I have a value in any of the cells in the same row where I have the value hello in the column A, I want not to delete that row. I'm going to copy this code again, and I'm going to go to my ChatGPT, and here I already have the prompt, and I'm going to paste the code. So this prompt say, I also want to change this code so that if there is a value hello in the column A, but there is a value in any of the cells in the row, that should not be deleted. That row should not be deleted. So now let me hit enter to see what we're going to get from ChatGPT in return. So we have got the code, and now let me paste the code, and now let me run the code to see if this code works in a way that I want it to run. All right, so this is how this code is working the way I want it. So this is a small example to show you that whenever you have a code that you want to improve, you can go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to improve that code or change that code according to you. When you know how to use ChatGPT and you have raw data, you can quickly analyze it. In this section, we're going to take a few basics first, and then we're going to move to something which is traditionally not possible in Excel. So we're going to have a lot of fun in this section. So let's start. So here I have a list of names. So basically two lists, but for same students. So I have score and I have attendance. Now from these two lists, I want to identify that what are the names of the students who have low score below 60 and who have attendance below 130. So I want to identify students based on these two criteria. So for this, I'm gonna go to my ChatGPT, and then I'm gonna write a prompt, or I can also attach the file first. And here's the file. I'm gonna click on open. So here's my prompt that says, I have two lists of same students. I want to know the name of the students with low score below 65 and low attendance below 130. So you need to give me the names of the students for whom both conditions are met. And let me hit enter. So this is the response from ChatGPT, but I want to improve this response because these are the only names. I'm not able to see the score and attendance. And for this, I need to go back to my workbook. But I want to have a complete picture here, the name, the score, and the attendance. So I'm going to write a prompt again. All right, so now I have the actual data of 4 students with the name, score, and attendance according to the condition that I shared with ChatGPT. Now let's write a different prompt and try to get a different kind of comparison here. Now here I want to identify if there's any student who have low score but have high attendance. So I'm just gonna enter the prompt. So there is no student with that condition. So here my idea was to show you that how you can actually compare two data sets using ChatGPT. And here in my workbook, I have sales data, and I want to analyze this data with ChatGPT. And mind you, this is not a short sort of data, but I have almost 10,000 entries. So what I'll do, I'll close this workbook and I'll go to my ChatGPT and attach this workbook to my chat. Now, there are few things that I have already decided that I want to know from ChatGPT. I want ChatGPT to analyze this data me and give me the insights that I want. So let's start with the first thing that I want. So what I want here, I want a month-wise quantity and total amount. And let's hit enter and see what we will get in the result. It might take a few minutes to ChatGPT to analyze this data, but as I can see, it's pretty fast. Okay, that's fine. So we have month, quantity, and total amount. And there is a small tweak that I want here. I want name of the months instead of number. And mind you, you can see here when you send data, when you add data in your prompt and you want to analyze that data, and ChatGPT is smart enough to give you a quick prompts here. Let's say if you want to analyze data by region, or just you want to see top selling products, and more you interact with ChatGPT for the data, more it will give you quick prompts to use to analyze that data. And now let me add a prompt to get this table again. All right, so here we have the data with month, quantity, and total amount. All right, so let's move to our next example where I'm gonna ask a few more things to ChatGPT. I have uploaded my workbook again, and now I'm gonna add my prompt here. So now this prompt says, I want to see the month-wise payment method and total amount. Make sure to use payment methods as column header and then a total column. Also round values without decimals. Let's see what we will get in the result. All right, so we have got our result, which is pretty much fine. It looks fine to me. We have column for bank transfer, cash, credit card, PayPal, and the total amount. Let me ask it again to change month number into month name. All right, so we have our data. And once you vet your data that this is what you want, you can simply download the file from here, or you can just expand this table and copy it. But the best way is to download it in your system so that you can use it further. Now let's move to a third example where I want to get a summary of month of order status. And that is why I have written, hey, I want to have a summary of month-wise order status. Make sure to use order status as headers and use count of orders as values. And let me hit enter and see what we will get in the result. And here we have our table. Okay. Now here with the each analysis that I'm trying to get from ChatGPT, I want it as a year and month name. So it's always better if you want something specific to add it in your prompt before actually making that correction. So this is the mistake that I have done. But whenever you're doing this, make sure to explain your prompt as in detail as you can. So we have a table. The table looks fine. And let me ask for a few improvements. So here we have got our table with cancelled, completed, pending, and total column. And again, I can download it from here. All right, so let's move to our next requirement. And I'm going to add my prompt here. Now this prompt says, I want to have summary table to know how many orders are pending. Create days range of 30 days, 0 to 30, 31 to 60, and share count of pending orders. And also, let me correct it, and also add a total column at the end. Let me say so that it can understand it. And let me hit enter to see how it's going to work. But I'm hoping to have the correct response in the first time. So as I said, sometimes ChatGPT will take few seconds, maybe sometimes complete minute to respond to you, but that's fine. So yeah, I mean, the table looks fine to me, but again, there's a few things that I need to improve. So when I was writing prompt, my actual idea of table was different, because that is why I mentioned that I need a total column. But this table also looks fine to me. The only thing that I need to correct here is these extra range of days. Right. So we have got our table the way I wanted. All right. So the total is at the bottom. Okay. So I was looking at in a different way, but that looks fine to me and pretty much usable. Now in the last example, I want to know top 5 regions based on quantity and top 5 regions based on the amount. And for this, I need two different tables. And let me see what we are going to get from ChatGPT in response. Okay. All right. So both of the tables looks pretty decent to me, and I can use it further. And I don't think I need any improvement in these tables. And here I have the same data, and now I want to create few charts using same data, so I can present it to my boss or any other user. So what I'll do, I'll close this file, and I'm going to go to my ChatGPT, and I'm going to attach this file to my ChatGPT message box. And now here I'm going to write a prompt that says, hey, please create a chart to show the pending orders based on the days range, such as 0 to 30, 31 to 60, and so on. So it takes a few seconds to reply back. And here I have my chart, that is a bar chart that shows me the total number of orders which are pending based on the days range. Now let me reply back to ChatGPT and ask to also add data to the bars. So here I have a chart with data which shows the pending orders by days range. Now let's move on and try to create a different chart. If I want to have a chart of top 5 regions where we sell on credit. And let me see what we're gonna get back from ChatGPT. All right, so here we have chart with top 5 regions where we sell on credit based on the sales amount. Now here, when you get a chart from ChatGPT, you have this option to download this chart. So when I download this chart, it gives me that chart image that I can use. I can add it in my presentation, and even I can add it in my Excel file as well. Now let's move to the third chart that I want to create, and that's a stack bar chart displaying the number of orders by status: complete, pending, cancelled across different regions. Now, again, here the point is, whenever you're trying to ask something from ChatGPT, you need to be precise and clear at the same time so that you get the exact thing that you want. So here also, like when we were analyzing data with ChatGPT, we got a few one-click prompts from ChatGPT depending on the data that we share with ChatGPT. So you can also use these things which you have here as option. But if you want to have specific charts, make sure to write a prompt in a very precise and clear manner. So let me see what we're gonna get from ChatGPT back in response. So here the chart that I have is actually it's not actually presentable. So I don't think I'm gonna use this chart anyway. But let me change this prompt a little bit and see if I can get data for the top 10 reasons. And here we have a chart. And let me add one more thing. Let's see if I can get percentage of the status based on complete, pending, and cancelled. All right, so it looks fine to me. And yes, I can use this chart. But again, sometimes you need to be very clear about what you want from ChatGPT. Now let me move to my fourth requirement that I have from ChatGPT, and that's creating a line chart showing the total sales over the time week-wise. Let's see what we're gonna get from ChatGPT. I'm hoping to have a nice, usable chart. Oh, and it looks fine, but you see at the end we have this, line really low because the might be because of partial data. Can you please remove data for the last week, which is incomplete? Let me see what we're gonna get. All right. So okay. So yes, so this is something we have. I think the line chart is not a great chart to show this data. And let me get this data as a bar chart. Being this is not a correct chart to use, the data is pretty much, I think the line chart was way better than this. And okay, that's fine. Let me ask for one more chart from ChatGPT. So this chart is basically the comparison of top 20 reasons versus the rest of the reasons. So I want to have a pie chart that can actually show the contribution for top 20 reasons versus the rest of the reasons. Let's see what we're going to get in the reply from ChatGPT. Here, this is not what I want. I want to have only two parts of this pie chart where I would have one part for top 20 reasons and one for other reasons. And let's see what we're gonna get in the reply from ChatGPT. All right, so this chart makes a lot of sense to me because I can see that top 20 reasons have 42.5% of contribution in the entire data, and the other reasons, rest of the reasons have 57.5% of contribution. All right, so let me show you the data that I have. So this data starts from January 2022 to August 2024. So basically this data is for 2 years and 8 months. Now I want to forecast these sales figures for next 6 months. That means starting from September 2024 to February 2025. For forecasting, I have two different models. So the first is autoregressive integrated moving average, in which when you predict future data points based on past trends and smoothing out random fluctuation. So if you have fluctuation like 1 month you have something higher and 1 month you have something lower, it will smooth out it will give an average and then predict future data with that. So this is the one model. And the second model is ETS, that means error, trend, and seasonal. So this model also take care of the past trend. So if you have a dip in February because of some seasonal, you have seasonal discounts or you have seasonal trends. So it will also consider that seasonal change in your forecasting. So you don't need to do anything extra. I'm just trying to explain these two models to you. So all you need to do is when you writing a prompt to ChatGPT for forecasting, you need to mention that this is the model I want you to use while forecasting the number. Now, this is the prompt that I have written, and I have mentioned everything in a detailed manner. And I have also mentioned that what kind of model that I want to use. And I have also asked for a table in return and a chart as well. And now I'm going to copy this prompt from here. And then I'm going to paste it in my ChatGPT window. And below that, I'm going to paste the data. You can also attach the Excel file if you have the paid subscription. Otherwise, you can simply go with pasting data here. And when you enter this prompt, it might take a few seconds, might be 1 minute for ChatGPT to analyze the entire data. And let me enter the prompt and see what we're going to get in return. All right, so here I have my reply from ChatGPT, and I have got a chart with the forecasted part here for the next 6 months. And then I have these figures for the next 6 months starting from September 2024 to February 2025. And here is a small analysis that we have got from ChatGPT that says the ARIMA model projects a continued steady increase in sales over the next 6 months, consistent with historical upward trend observed from January 2022 to August 2024. The monthly sales figures shows a regular and gradual increase, indicating a healthy growth trend in your business. So this is something ChatGPT was able to identify from the data. And here below, I have a complete table, which includes September to February. And now I'm just gonna copy this because I just want these figures here. So I'm gonna copy it here and I'm gonna enter it as a, so I'm gonna enter it with the model name. But let me create a new column here. Let me complete this. All right, so now I have figures with the ARIMA model. And now the next thing is to use the different model to get figures with that model as well. So I'm going to go back to my prompt and I'm going to make a little change here. I'm just going to change the name of the model, and I'm going to copy it as it is. And then again, let me create a new chat window here. Here's my prompt, and here's the data. And here we go. All right. So now we have got a reply from ChatGPT. We have got a chart, and then sales figure, the explanation, and the table, complete table. So in this model, we have a different kind of forecasting, which is not like the previous one, because in this model, it also takes fluctuations and consider all those fluctuations and trends while forecasting. So if you see this chart, we have a dip in the last month. That is the February 2025. We have a dip. The reason for this dip is if you go back to February 2024, and if you see the figures, the January 2024 and the February 2024, there was a dip of $500. And the same trend it has used in while forecasting January 2025 to February 2025. And let me read out this trend analysis from ChatGPT. So it says the forecasted sales figures shows a continuation of steady increase observed in your historical data. The model captures the seasonal trend effectively with a slight dip expected in February 2025. So it says expected. That means the trend was already there in the data. So this is the difference between two different models while forecasting. It has nothing to do with your data because data is same in both of the forecasting. So it says with a slight dip expected in February 2025, which might due to seasonal variation observed in previous years. The journal upward trend indicates a strong and consistent growth in sales. So the point here is you can perform forecasting with ChatGPT. The only thing here that you need to do is to find or you need to decide on the model that you want to use. Even though you can ask ChatGPT, hey, what are the top 5 models I can use to forecast sales? So it will also help you in that way also, but make sure to have 1 or 2 models there to identify, which model is good for you, which model gives you a better clarity over data. All right, so here I have data of feedbacks from 20 customers. Now, each customer shared a unique feedback for our product. So I'm going to use ChatGPT for this, and I want to have a quick summary about how many feedbacks are positive, how many feedbacks are negative, and how many feedbacks are neutral. And I have already written 2 prompts to use. In the first prompt, I'm saying I have feedback from 20 customers, and now I want you to check each feedback in detail, word by word, and use the sentiment analysis to identify which one is positive, which one is negative, and which one is neutral. First of all, I'm going to copy this prompt from here, and now I'm going to go to ChatGPT, and I'm going to paste this prompt here, and below this prompt, I'm going to paste my feedbacks. You can also attach the Excel file, but for now, I'm just going to paste it down here. And now and now let's see what we're going to get from ChatGPT in return. All right, so we have got our response from ChatGPT. Now in this response, ChatGPT has shared each of the feedback and identify words from the feedback and then marked it as a positive, negative, or neutral. So let's say if I go with this third feedback, which says it's an okay product, but I think it's overpriced for what it offers. So ChatGPT marked it as a neutral, feedback. And here we have a positive one that says the product is amazing. It exceeded my expectation and quality is top notch. So the point here is ChatGPT can go word by word, identify some word, even in some feedbacks, the first word or first few words are positive, but in few feedbacks where we have neutral, you can see we have a positive feedback at the starting, but there's also a feedback to improve something. So in that case, ChatGPT has marked it as neutral. So this kind of analysis is quite tough to do with formulas and all sort of things in Excel. And ChatGPT is pretty smart in identifying and reading and understanding the natural language. Now, let me ask for a small table, small summary of count of positive, negative, and neutral feedbacks. So here you can see we have got our summary, which says 8 positive feedbacks, 4 negative feedbacks, and 8 neutral feedbacks. And now I want to understand that what are negative and neutral feedbacks are actually suggesting us. So I want to understand what customers want us to improve. So for this, I have written this prompt. And now I'm going to paste it here and ask ChatGPT to identify few points for me so that I can understand what are the improvement we require in our products. So here we have got our reply from ChatGPT, and it has shared all the negative and neutral feedbacks along with all the improvements that customers are suggesting us. Now, but I want here to have a precise instead of this one by one feedback, one by one suggestion. So I'm gonna ask it again. So this is what I wanted. So we have 3 improvements for services, and then we have 3 improvements for products. So my point here is that this kind of analysis is really, really easy with ChatGPT because you don't need to read all the feedbacks or all sort of comments from customers. But instead, you can ask ChatGPT to read those reviews and comments for you and share insights the way you want. Now, you might have heard of this new function called Copilot, which is a new AI function. But with Copilot, you need a separate subscription. But with this function that I'm going to show you, you don't need any subscription. You just start with a very little amount and then add more when you utilize that amount. So let's have a look. All right, so here you can see in my workbook, I have this function LABS.GENERATIVEAI. And with the help of this function, I'm actually getting the date of birth of each of these celebrities. Now, to get this function, we need to do a few things. The first is you need to have a paid plan, but you also need to add a few credits in your account because we are going to use the API from OpenAI, from the company which has developed ChatGPT. So for this, you need to pay a small amount to get credits. So it's not that expensive, but still you need to pay a few dollars, like $5 or maybe $10, because I have started with $10. So once you open this web page, you need to go to settings and then you need to go to billing. And here you need to add, as I said, few dollars, like five. You can add anything above $5, but you need to add at least $5. But the point is, if you use this function, the function that I'm using in my workbook, even if you use this function like 100 times in a day, it will not cost you more than 2 or 3 cents. So let me show you my usage, what I have done today. So if I go to my usage page, you can see I have used it 60 times today, and the cost that I have paid is not even 1 cent. So if you really want to play around with this function or really want to use this function in your work, I would suggest you to add at least few dollars here and start using this function because this is going to help you in a big way. But let me move ahead and show you how to activate this function, how to connect API with your Excel. So once you add credit in your account, you need to go to dashboard and then you need to go to API keys. And from here, we're going to generate a new API. And I'm going to enter a name. And we have our new API key. Now let me go back to my Excel and let me delete everything here. Let me reset everything. So once you generate this API key from your OpenAI account, you need to go back to your Excel and then you need to go to the developer tab, and from there you need to click on add-ins. So here we need to install a new add-in that is called Excel Labs. So I will enter Excel Labs. So this add-in is completely free. You just need to install it in your Excel. And the moment you add it, it will open somewhere here on the right side of your window. And once you scroll down, it gives you option to configure API key. And here I'm going to add the new API key, which I have just generated a few seconds back. And now I'm going to paste it here and it will save this API key. Now, here are a few settings that you can use here if I want to, move to a higher model, because as we know that we are using different models in ChatGPT. So in the same way, we have here different models. So I'm going to use the highest model now. And here are a few more settings that you can change, but we will learn about these settings just in few minutes. So let me come back. And now I'm going to write a new function to get age for these celebrities. So I'm going to enter LABS.GENERATIVEAI. And now here we have an argument, which is basically like adding a prompt, the way we add a prompt in ChatGPT. So here I'm going to add a prompt. So this prompt says, what is the date of birth? And then I have this A1, reference to A1, where I have the name of the celebrity. And then I'm instructing, please share only the date, no text. And now let me close the function and let me hit enter. Let me drag this formula down. And I think I need to So it takes a few seconds to return the result because it's, fetching data from internet, with generative AI in a real time. So it will take a few seconds, sometimes maybe a minute to complete the entire, all the formulas in the cells. And here I have date of birth for all the celebrities in my Excel workbook. And mind you, this data is basically fetched by generative AI on real time. All right, so now it's time to understand the generative AI function and the settings that you have in the Excel Labs add-in. Now in the settings, when you click on it, you will find a few options that you can change. In the first option, you have a drop down to select different models. So if you want to go with a really higher model, where you want to have a, greater accuracy of results, you can choose GPT-4o, or you have the GPT-4o mini, which is a free version in the ChatGPT itself. But here, when you connect API, you get access to all the models that ChatGPT has. So you can go with 4o or 4o mini, or even you can go with 4, which is slightly old model. And if you want to generate result for tasks which are not really complex, so you can go with the lighter version like 3.5 or 3.5 turbo. But here I'm going to use the 4o, that is the higher model that we have. And after that, here we have few settings that you can change. Now the first setting is temperature. So temperature is basically allows you to have creativity in your results. So let's say if you're asking about a person's or a celebrity's biography, or want to have details about its age, date of birth, whatever. So if the temperature is higher, on the higher side, it will give you different result each time you ask the same question. So if I'm asking about his age or his date of birth. So it will give me result in a different way each time if the temperature is higher. But if temperature is 0, it will give me same result without any creativity every single time. So the default value is 0.5. And if you want to have standard or less creative answer, you can just, change it to 0. And you can also define temperature in your function as well. So there is an argument which is optional, obviously, but you can define the temperature in the function as well. Now, moving ahead, we also have this setting that is called maximum output length. So this maximum output length basically allows you to have a longer reply from the function. So if you go with 256, that means 256 characters. And if you go with 5 character for a single word, so you can have 50 words in one single reply, and you can increase it from 256 to 4097. And you can also define these tokens in your function as well. So if you want to have the default settings of 256, but you want to increase these tokens for a single a single function, you can define these tokens here in your function as well. So there's an argument where you can define it. These two options control the repetitiveness of words within the prompt and the result. So with this, you can actually control, how likely the generative AI function use the same word within the result text, or the response it gives you in the result. So if you use it as 0, so there is very less chance, the probability is less to use the same word again and again in the result. And in the end, you have this content moderation option. And when you turn on this option, the generative AI function is less likely to give you any result which is offensive or harmful. So by default, OpenAI wants you to, activate or turn on this option, but there's also a chance that you get a value error while using this option turn on. And if you face those errors, you can turn off it and then try again. But as of now, I'm going to using the all the settings basically as it is. But if you want to have some changes in the settings, you can definitely do that. But you can also use these two settings, temperature and max tokens, within your function. If you don't want to change here, you can use it a different value in the function as well. And that function will give you results based on these two settings. Now I want to show you a very, very interesting example. And this example is really unique and help you to identify the power of this generative AI function. Now here I have data. A data is basically some English sentences where each sentence has a name. Now I want to extract these names into the column B. Now the problem is with conventional or traditional, methods in Excel cannot help me in any way. The reason is in each cell, the name is at the different position. So in the first cell, the name is at the end, and in the third cell, the name is at the starting. And even I cannot identify the starting position, the number, the character from where the name starts. Now, here I'm gonna use this function, generative AI function, to extract names from these cells. So I have already written the function here, and let me add it here and then show you how it works. So here in the cell B1, I've added this function with the prompt that says, please extract the full name from cell A1. So I'm referring to the cell A1, and then again the text that says only name, no other text or value. For example, Sarah Collins. Now let me hit enter and see what we're gonna get from this function in return. So it has returned only the name. Now let me drop this formula up to all the cells. So it will take a few minutes to return result for all the cells. All right, so here I have result for all the cells and it looks pretty neat. I hardly had to change the prompt. Now moving to a next example, I have here data for some products for 7 months starting from January 2024 to July 2024. And now I want to forecast the numbers for the month of August. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the generative AI function. And once I insert the function, I'm going to paste my prompt here, which I have already written. And this prompt says, this is the product quantity sold in last 7 months. Now please forecast for this month and please return only the number without any text. Now this is my prompt, but I do need to specify the quantity here. So instead of simply referring to the range, this B2 to H2, I need to combine data in a single value, all these numbers, all these sales figures, and then specify it with the prompt. So for this, I'm going to use a function that is called text join. And in the delimiter, I'm going to use a comma and a space, true for ignoring empty cells. And here I have my range where I have numbers, where I have quantity. And now I'm going to hit enter to see the result, the forecasted number for the month of August by the generative AI function. So it says the forecasted number for eco-friendly bag is 120. And let me drop this formula down up to the last product, and it will take a few seconds to complete the forecasting for all the products. So here we have our forecasted numbers with the help of generative AI function. But I had to make a few. All right, so here we have our forecasted numbers from generative AI function, but I had to make a few changes in the prompt. So I had to add, these 4 words that says like 120 or 130, etc. So this was because some of the values here, like for the last product, that is LED desk lamp, so it was showing text, the forecasted number with text. So I had to add this to, to show, to tell the generative AI function to show me only numbers. Sometimes it will happen with you that you need to tweak your prompt again and again to get the desired result from the function. And here I have a few reviews from our customers, and now I want to perform sentiment analysis just like we did in the last video. But this time, instead of using ChatGPT directly, I'm going to use the generative AI function. So I'm going to enter the function here, and then I'm going to refer to the cell where I have the review. Now, I want to combine this review with a prompt, which I have already written. And this prompt says, this is a review from our customer. Please go through entire review word by word and analyze the sentiment of the review and then return the result as positive, negative, or neutral. Please just give me a single word answer. So now I'm going to copy it from here. I'm going to go back to my worksheet and I'm going to paste it here. And now I'm going to close the function to get the result. So let's wait for the first review. And the first result is positive. And if I look at my review, the review is positive in itself. And now let me drag this formula down. And now I need to wait for a few seconds, maybe for 1 minute to, complete the analysis of all the reviews. And here I have result for all the reviews, and some of the reviews are positive and some are negative. And we also have a few neutral reviews. Now, whenever you're using this generative AI function for sentiment analysis, you can re-enter the function if you want AI or ChatGPT to, reassess your review and give you a new result. It might change the result or it might not change the result, but you can always reassess your review while performing sentiment analysis. So all you need to do is just edit the function and then re-enter it. And so give it a few seconds to reassess or reanalyze the review. All right, so now it's time to create your own custom GPT. So for this, you don't need to know any sort of coding or anything technical. You just need to have clarity that what kind of GPT you want to build, and you need to write a few instructions for that. So once you click on your account, you have this option here that is called My GPTs. Now, when you click on it, further it gives you an option to create a GPT. And now when I click on it, it gives me this window where I can configure my own GPT. Now here you have two options. The first is to configure your GPT yourself by adding all the instructions, as I said. And the second is to use ChatGPT to create those instructions. So let's say if I want to create a custom GPT for Excel formulas, I can simply ask ChatGPT to, and it will help me to create this custom GPT. So first of all, I need to specify a name, and it will also generate a profile picture, a picture for the custom GPT using AI itself. Now, once I go to configure tab, you can see all the instructions have been added. The name is there, description is there, and instructions are already there. And here I also have some conversation starters that I can click to start the conversation to send a quick prompt to ChatGPT. My custom GPT is ready, but there's one thing which is very important that I'm gonna do now. And that thing is to use my own instructions, which I have written. So if I go here and you can see I have all the instructions that I want to add in this custom GPT. And mind you, all of these instructions are pretty much in detail. Let's say this GPT specializes in Excel formulas for data analysts who work with large data sets. So I'm specifying here, hey, this custom GPT is for Excel formulas for someone who's a data analyst and work with large data sets. And I have added all the instructions like I want a step-by-step explanation. I want to have alternate formulas. I also want to understand how to error handle those formulas that ChatGPT is going to suggest me. And then I want to have real world examples. I want to have specific formula recommendation based on my area of work. Let's say if I'm someone who's working in finance, who's a data analyst in finance, so I want to have formulas or functions based on that. And then I also want to know, if possible, the formula or the function that ChatGPT is suggesting me is available in a particular Excel version or not. And then I want ChatGPT to give me some extra tips to use that formula. And now I'm going to copy these instructions from here and I'm going to go to my ChatGPT and add these instructions there. And now when you scroll down, you also have an option to upload files. So if you have a large instruction files which you want ChatGPT to include while responding to you for your prompt, you can upload these files. But for this, you need to activate this option that is code interpreter and data analysis. And now I'm going to click on create. Now, what happens is when you create a custom GPT, you can use it yourself. You can create a sharing link. Let's say if you want to share it with some of your colleagues or anyone or even your friends, you can create that link as well. Or you can also add that GPT to the GPT store. So I'm going to click on save. And here's my link to my custom GPT. I'm going to copy it and click on new tab. And here's my custom GPT with the name that I have specified, Excel Formula Helper. And here are the few conversation starters. And now let me add a simple prompt to see how this custom GPT works. And you can see here the reply that I have got from ChatGPT is quite detailed. I have 3 different scenarios to use this formula. So one is for multiplying 2 cells if a condition is met, and the second is to multiply and summing values with the condition. And the third one is to use an array formula for conditional multiplication. But the point is this custom GPT works with the instructions that I have added while creating it. And you can also use GPTs that have been created by other people. So when you click on explore GPTs, you'll get an entire store here from where you can search for a GPT that you want to use. Let's say if I want to use a GPT for, so I can select any of these and just clicking on start chat, I can use it. So this is how you have option to create your own custom GPT, or you can also use GPTs that has been created by other people. Hey, thanks for completing this course, and do let me know how you're going to use ChatGPT with Excel. And make sure to check out this video, and do not forget to download your ebooks, and I'll see you in the next video.